Is being a car enthusiast enough to be an auto stock investor?
One of the most important things to look at, and probably the only thing that determines a lot of any investment decision for auto companies, is the sales number. The market share or market leadership in EVs has been changing very dramatically and fast. Ola used to be number one at a point in time, but now if Ola sales last month, they have dipped by 50%. Maruti, for example, is building Asia's largest battery plant in Gujarat. Cars were a much later part of like Mahindra's journey. Initially, they were tractor heavy. Story or narrative that EVs are doing well and Mahindra is killing it in the EV market should drive valuations higher as well.
Is it safe to say that from within the automotive sector, is this your golden goose?
Can't say that explicitly right now, but hello and welcome to yet another podcast by Rupeeting, which is powered by Paterson. Today we've got here with us myself, Sagar Lele, who's the director at Paterson Securities, and we've also got Siddhant Hariramani, who's the head of marketing at Paterson. Today we're here to talk about the auto sector, which is one of the very difficult sectors to manage and research from an investment standpoint because everybody thinks they're an expert at autos. There's so much information available out there that everyone in the market seems to have an expert opinion. But when it comes to stock selection, of course, things are different. So we'll talk about one specific stock, which is Mahindra, and then boil down to whether it seems like a good investment idea or not.
I want to start with one question. So if you is being a car enthusiast enough to be an auto stock investor?
Not really. In fact, I know a couple of analysts who are senior auto leads, but they don't even know how to drive. So analyzing data and driving a car have nothing to do with each other, unfortunately.
Assuming driving's a lot easier. Okay, so let's begin, right? I want to take this from the perspective of an average layman, right, who's just sort of investing, who doesn't obviously know how to analyze data and analyze numbers and how. So let's start with how would you go about picking, auto stocks? Right, what would be your approach? What are the things you would look at? What numbers would you look at? Just give us a little, sort of an overview on that.
So one of the most important things to look at, and probably the only thing that determines a lot of or most of any investment decision for auto companies, is the sales number. Now, this number, fortunately or unfortunately for the auto sector, is something that is reported on a monthly basis, and into great detail in terms of which segments, how much sales is happening, and which model, etc. for a lot of companies. So that high frequency data gives you a lot of insight into which company is doing well. You also sort of know the average pricing across the country for these models. So you can give out a fair estimate of where a company is headed, how much market share they're getting in which segment itself is doing very well, and ultimately come to which auto company will do better than the others. So sales being the primary driver, of course, margins, valuations, etc. follow. But if I have to track one singular metric which determines any forecast for an auto company, it would be the sales number. But that also is changing quite a lot and changes over time. So I remember back in like say 2012, 13, there was a time when SUVs in India were just about launched as not a very rural North India thing, rural or North India thing, but also like an urban phenomena. It just started picking up, and one of the companies to drive that was Mahindra. Using the XUV 500.
Right.
So everybody was very busy tracking passenger car numbers at that time. And suddenly you had SUVs as a segment pick up massively because of the success of XUV 500. And this was followed by Creta and these other SUVs. Everybody followed with a model in SUVs. So the numbers, again, we're looking at sales numbers, but which sales numbers you're looking at started to change.
But I mean, just to go on a slight tangent here, right? I mean, I'm assuming the segment of cars, right? As you said, there was suddenly a surge in SUV sales, right? Because of Mahindra or a particular model or a particular trend or whatever, right? And I'm assuming these trends keep on changing, right? There are now, there are compact SUVs, there are SUVs, there are, hatchbacks. And I'm assuming there's a lot of popular culture that is also influencing these trends in terms of which segments have more demand, which segments predicted to have more demand in the future as well.
Yeah, yeah, and these change over time, right? There was, I mean, EVs have been, sorry, SUVs have been glamorous for the last 10 years. Most of India's market has moved towards SUVs. But now what is happening is, of course, EVs are becoming sexier or glam driven or economical or whatever reason, right? So that's the new segment to look at. So if you look at how auto stocks have performed over the last 2, 3 years, you'll see that Tata Motors has grown immensely, not just in terms of its domestic sales, but also in terms of its stock price. And that is attributed not just to its brand revamp, design revamp, which has happened in the traditional fuel cars, but also its entire EV segment. And it's come to a point where Tata Motors dominates the entire market with about a 90% market share in EVs. So they've completely ruled the EV market. However, the market is very small. So the interesting thing that is now happening is that EVs are a larger trend, but who wins in the EV market will keep changing, and that will keep determining which company will do well as a stock.
But I mean, just to play devil's advocate here, is EV still a very urban, upper middle class and above phenomena? Do you see EV being something that the masses would be attracted to in the future as well?
The masses are already attracted to it, right? It's just, I mean, we're talking plainly from the perspective of four-wheelers, for example, here right now. But if you look at the two-wheeler market, the penetration is much higher, and
Right.
it is pretty uniform in terms of whether it is rural or whether it is urban, or let's say semi-urban or urban. If you look at even three-wheelers as a market, the EV sales there are going ballistic. So you look at not just three-wheelers from, so again, there are two parts in three-wheelers. There is rickshaws, and there is the three-wheelers which are sort of those chhagda
Tempo?
type. No,
You mean
no, no.
tempo? No.
No, so if you go to like slightly like tier two cities, you'll not see those rickshaws, right? You'll see slightly longer three-wheelers,
Yeah,
which
yeah,
are
I
again
know what
passenger.
you mean. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So they're called various names in different parts of the
Right.
country. Chhagda, they're called in Gujarat sometimes. They're called some other part. But those are also becoming massively electric now. So I don't think it's a urban phenomena anymore. It's pretty uniform across the country.
Fair enough. So now let's say if when you're, I mean, we're talking about selecting automobile stocks, right? So how much of an importance or how much of a, let's say, a weightage would you put when you're selecting a particular stock and you're, sort of you're backing a stock for the next few months, years, etc., over a period of time? How much importance does EV sales actually play on your selection over there?
So quite a lot these days, because at the end of it, you know that EVs are the future. I mean, if you look at any developed economy, you've seen that EVs form a majority part of the incremental sales. So they account for more than 50% of the new vehicles sold. Obviously, the pool of vehicles in the country is much larger, and hence the overall demographic will change over time, because the average life of a car would be between 7 and 10 years.
Right.
So the overall system will change over time. However, incremental sales are much higher for EVs.
But do you think?
And
Uh, sorry to interrupt you. Do you think our country has the infrastructure to support this massive rise in EV sales that is coming?
so it'll be like a chicken and egg situation for a long time, right? You may play the devil's advocate and say that, hey, the charging infrastructure is not there, so EV sales won't do well. EV sales won't, I mean, if there are not enough electric vehicles out there, then there is no point putting the charging infrastructure. So I
Right.
think in such an industry, at least what we've seen in other countries is that the infrastructure and sales go hand in hand and develop together over time. So one doesn't come before the other, both happen together. So India is again getting there. You see a lot of like even in cities, charging stations, individual homes having the infrastructure, etc. So and at the end of it, you are also seeing technology improve and overall mileage increase. So capacity also takes care of a lot of the limitations. So yeah, that's I don't think that's a problem really in any country.
Right.
But
Are
coming
there
back to the EV fleet in terms of sales, so I think coming to how much weightage, right? I think
yeah.
weightage is pretty high. But at the end of it, what is happening is that because the market is so small at this point in time and the penetration is low, the market share or market leadership in EVs has been changing very dramatically and fast. So if you look at two-wheelers, it's a great example. Ola used to be number one at a point in time.
Right.
But now if you look at Ola sales last month, they have dipped by 50%. So Ola's gone down the ranks because Bajaj and TVS, etc., have come up and they are sort of now leaders in the market, and Ola's slipped. Similarly, in four-wheelers, if you look at, very interestingly, there was a huge rage when Mahindra launched its two electric vehicles, right? The BE6 and XE9 or whatever. So those two were insanely became popular. Those models were very bold and striking, and suddenly, like on the first day itself, there are thousands of bookings happening. What will happen is eventually Mahindra will sort of cut out in that market share that Tata Motors has ruled so far. So Tata Motors was able to get that majority market share only because they were new in the market, but obviously it will be eaten up by a lot more players as competition intensifies.
Right. So, I mean, just to understand one more thing, right? So, let's say the infrastructure that we were talking about behind, so for EV sales to increase, and as you said, right, when the number of cars increase, when the amount of purchases of EV vehicles increases, naturally the infrastructure has to follow, like with anything else, right? But is it the same companies that are in control of that infrastructure, or is it different players involved?
That's a tricky one. See, at the end of it, what happens is the major component in an electric vehicle is the battery. That constitutes to about 50 to 60% of the cost of a battery as well, right? And that infrastructure now, charging infrastructure, usually, I mean, in terms of battery swapping, it will be dominated by whoever is manufacturing the battery. But when it comes to charging infrastructure, I think you just need an electric point and a charger that is compatible,
Right.
right? So that doesn't really make too much of a difference. But interestingly, what will happen is the not the battery infrastructure, but who rules the battery market will make a difference. I'll just elaborate a little on this. So basically, most of the batteries that go into Tata cars or any other cars right now are imported. They don't manufacture those batteries in India. When you import those batteries, the cost of it is much higher. So now what is happening is that Maruti, for example, is building Asia's largest battery plant in Gujarat. So they'll have captive capacity for electric vehicle batteries. So if you've noticed, Maruti's not yet come into the game for EVs.
Right.
Very surprising that the largest car maker in India with such a high market share has not entered the ecosystem yet. So clearly the market is not mature enough. What Maruti is doing is they're setting up the battery plant right now. What will happen in the future is that once the battery plant is set up, they will have a distinct cost advantage over any other player making EVs. So they'll be able to sell EVs anyway are more expensive compared to other the traditional cars. Maruti will be able to make EV cars at a affordable rate compared to the others, and that has been their strategy throughout their existence.
Right.
Provide cheap cars, provide fuel efficient cars, and they will do well. And I think the same strategy will come into EVs as well, where they'll say that provide cheaper cars, provide cars with better battery life, and you will kill the market. So over the last 2 years, while Tata Motors did well in the nascent stage of the EV market, I think that Mahindra will probably do better at this point in time, given their new models and their bold approach, and how they've suddenly caught the market's vibe. And in the future, when Maruti launches its lineup, the market will shift to Maruti, and so will stock preferences. So while Tata Motors did amazingly well over the last 2, 3 years, if you look at the last 3 to 6 months, they've done very poorly. Mahindra has started doing amazingly well in terms of stock price. And I mean, if our current hypothesis goes right, that market will shift from Mahindra to Maruti.
Right. So I know we're talking about Mahindra today, and we're obviously going to dive deeper into Mahindra. But just one more question, right? That so you're obviously, as you rightly said, right? Once Maruti sort of sets up their battery plant and they're manufacturing these batteries within India, obviously they get a massive cost advantage, right? They start selling their EV cars at a much cheaper price, right? So does that drive down the overall final selling price across the market? Do you think Maruti is going to eventually force its competitors to sort of meet at a competitive price, and the current prices that Tata and Mahindra and anybody else is at right now will not be sustainable in the long run?
They will drive pricing lower, right? Because if there are cheaper options available, people will go for the cheaper option. So, and driving prices down is not going to be so simple in the EV market because you'll have two options, right? Either companies set up their captive battery plants, which will take some time, and then they're able to push costs lower or price lower, or they start foregoing profit because they are matching Maruti's rates or offering them at discount.
Right.
And so while revenue or market shares remains a little intact, their profitability takes a hit. In which case, again, as a stock picker, I would prefer a Maruti because then I'm getting good revenue growth as well as healthy profit margins, which result in better financial performance compared to the others.
Right. So basically, to sum it up, Maruti is the future, but Mahindra is the present right now. So let's go sort of dive a little deeper into Mahindra right now. Obviously, from what I understand, and you're going to obviously dive deeper into this, right? But from what I understand is Mahindra, while we all are complete, when you say Mahindra, you think of especially us living in cities and living in urban areas of the country, we always think of the Thar, the XUV. We always think of those big cars that are usually in the small roads blocking traffic and delaying you by 20 minutes every day, right? But obviously, there's a lot more to Mahindra than just these urban vehicles that we're talking about, right?
Yeah, so traditionally, I mean, cars were a much later part of like Mahindra's journey. Initially, they were tractor heavy, and they still are, right? They are kings in the tractor market. So you may not see them as much in the passenger cars or passenger vehicle market, but tractors, they've got a 40% market share. They're the absolute rulers in terms of selling tractors in India. And they classify it under something called farm equipment, that division. And that division, while it contributes now lower in terms of revenue, it is extremely profitable. Mahindra's bread and butter, or rather the cash cow for Mahindra, would be its tractor division. At a point, it was also foraying into other things, like any other car company or conglomerate. They wanted to get into two-wheelers, three-wheelers, heavy commercial vehicles, light commercial vehicles, and all of that, even luxury cars for that matter. They also acquired this one South Korean company back in the day called Sangyong.
Right.
Um,
Yeah.
and yeah, but that didn't quite work out. A lot of the things didn't work out for Mahindra. And they've come from that phase of trying to expand into everything and become a end-to-end sort of full bracket car player, not car vehicle manufacturer. Now down to only its focus areas of saying that we're good at tractors, let's do tractors. We're good at SUVs, let's focus on that. So they've got a much sharpened focus now compared to previously.
But so what you're essentially basically saying is that Mahindra's been a major player in the tractor industry for a while, right? It's not something that this has just happened overnight, or it's a recent thing. They've been there for a while. They've been dominating that industry. They've been profitable in that industry. They've tried to sort of foray into different segments and eventually sort of gone back to their core competency, saying that okay, you know what, this is what we're good at, which is tractors and a few segments
Bolero.
of passenger vehicles.
Bolero like vehicles that are sexier.
Yeah. It's just we block the roads, but we're efficient.
We go on giddy, we put on loud music, we
But yeah, so what is the what do you see happening? I mean, because I know when we're talking about tractors again, as I said, right, we're mostly us and most of our audience also are people from living in cities, and obviously we don't come across Mahindra tractors on a daily, right? What we see on a day-to-day basis are the passenger vehicles, are the vehicles or the new models that keep coming up, the ads that you see on TV, etc. But obviously tractors is a huge sort of part of their portfolio, if you want to say call it that, right? So tell us a little bit about how their tractor business looks like, maybe a little snapshot or something.
tractors constitute for 35% of revenues for Mahindra. However, they contribute to more than 40% of their operating profits. So that just says that tractors are more profitable. And when that business does well, the overall profitability of the company improves even better. So, from a stock market perspective, when tractors do well, that cycle is doing well. With both are doing well, it's extremely well. But when tractors do better, it tends to favor Mahindra stock even more. At this point in time, because the new EVs launched by Mahindra in their SUV market, they've got such an amazing traction, and these are see bookings. They've not started selling in full force yet. Now they'll start selling in full force, and that's when the numbers for Mahindra will improve. So EVs definitely are cutting it for Mahindra in the near term. However, what is also cutting it, and which is the more exciting undiscovered part, is the tractor sales. And that's what personally I'm more excited about. I'm more excited to see that tractors have been doing extremely well for Mahindra in FY24 as well as FY25. And that will continue through the next year as well. For me, right now, it is a combination of the two, with tractors being the not so glamorous, but the meaty portion of the business.
So essentially, what we're sort of establishing here is that uh, tractor sales are generally just more generating more profitability for the company. Uh, but have tractor sales been increasing? Is tractor sales on an upward trend right now for Mahindra?
Yeah. So see, FY23 was bad. That's when tractor sales had actually declined. But then 24 was a year where it picked up to double-digit growth, and 25 has continued on that growth trajectory. Normally, tractor sales follow a 4-year cycle. They will do really well for 4 years, and then they will see a slight dip, and that cycle sort of continues. Your cycle is much more dependent on monsoon as a factor as well as rural incomes, compared to slightly more different factors when it comes to car sales, which is what is trending, what are customers buying, how bold your models are, what are you launching, and stuff like that. So the market dynamics are very different. And the interesting part at this point in time, if you look at the data, is that most of your Indian workforce is still dependent on agriculture, right? At the end of it, half your tractor buyers upgrade every 7 or 8 years. Government MSP hikes are sort of averaging at about 6% YOY. So all these factors do really play well into the structural story for tractors. However, on the cyclical side, what is happening is that your reservoir levels are strong right now. Kharif sowing has been pretty good in the north of India. Rainfall expectations are pretty above normal. So if you also track how the global climate pattern has been, we went through a 4-year period of El Nino before this, which is normally associated with drought-like conditions, deficient rainfall, erratic climate conditions, forest fires, and stuff like that. Now that is changing to La Nina, which causes typically for India normal to excess monsoon. So with a healthy monsoon, you get good sowing. With good sowing, you get good yield. With good yield, you are able to get good pricing also in the market, and everybody is happy. Farm incomes are great, and that results in good tractor sales as well. So from that angle, FY26 will sort of look amazing when it comes to tractor sales. And Mahindra being a 40% market share company in that entire market, it will naturally do well as well. So that's what's resulting in that exciting part when it comes to Mahindra's tractor business.
So I'm
Um,
assuming another because of the target audience and the farmers or the agricultural sector, right, which is the main audience of people purchasing tractors, right? I'm assuming a major part in driving tractor sales also comes with the financing options that are available with it, right? So is there something that Mahindra's done within that to sort of push their sales even further?
Yeah. I mean, they've got Mahindra Finance, which is financing a lot of the tractor sales. So they're able to give them not just loans, but also insurance for these tractors. So that, which is also a major part of, or which is very, I mean, this entire community is very sensitive to pricing, right? More
Right.
sensitive than urban guy, because your revenue itself is going to be very cyclical and dependent on the monsoon. Whereas for us living here, our jobs are going to be pretty steady. We're going to crib about 20% wage hike or 10% and stuff like that. But for them, it's a zero or nothing, or even a decline in some year and whatever. So financing becomes, as you said, very important. And Mahindra Finance is a captive finance arm they have, an NBFC which provides loans, which provides support, and that has done extremely well as an entity as well. Now, Mahindra Finance is revenue also sort of seeps into Mahindra and Mahindra as a company and stuff like that, but that's a part. But they've got an amazing network. They've got a service network of more than 1,400 centers. They are well entrenched. They're growing pretty fast and aggressively, and that's definitely helping out on the sales part as well.
Great. And also, from what I understand, right, and again, correct me if I'm wrong, but Mahindra's tractor sales, obviously, major market is India, but they are also now exporting to a lot of agricultural countries, right? They've actually established a little bit of dominance outside India as well.
Yeah. No, so if you look at the export market, obviously, I mean, India is not the only agricultural economy. There are several other economies which are also pretty heavy on agriculture, including Brazil, including the US. So what Mahindra's, I mean, it wasn't very focused on exports earlier. If you looked at the market share, while Mahindra had about 40% market share in the tractor market domestically, it constituted to only about 15 to 16% of, still does about, of the export market. So a majority of the export market has been dominated by this company known as Sonalika. So that has been ruling the export market. However, Mahindra is really ramping up on it and in a smart way. So what is very interesting is that the average value of a Mahindra tractor which is exported is about 35% higher compared to Sonalika's. Now, why that's happening is because number one, other markets are not as price sensitive as India. Secondly, what they're doing is they're doing higher tonnage tractors compared to Sonalika. They're targeting the premium segment, and also they're fitting these tractors with a lot of tech. For example, telematics, which help you ensure that the theft of fuel is lower when you're tracking the vehicle. So if you fit in these electronics and these services on top of the tractor, offer premium ones, they're doing much better value per vehicle compared to the others. So they're doing that in a smarter way. Number two, what they're doing smartly is attacking markets like the US or Brazil, which are slightly better markets compared to the others who are targeting African markets. Africa, India, pretty similar in terms of the farm demography, ability to pay, pricing power, price sensitivity, and all of that. But if you go for these other markets which are slightly more premium, then they're sort of really zeroing down on better stuff. Like for example, 65% of Sonalika sales come from Africa, right? However, if you look at Mahindra, they are entrenching into US vineyards, into orchards in European Union, in better cash crop sort of places in ASEAN itself, like Vietnam and places like that. So just smartly saying that we'll sell better vehicles in better markets. And they're doing a much better job by protecting profitability, being able to get into these markets easier, make it easier to sell, show numbers that are more aggressive. So while exports are still smaller and domestic is much larger a portion for Mahindra, the export opportunity is definitely something that looks exciting and looks like an added benefit to their existing tractor performance in India.
Makes sense. So I think it's quite established that Mahindra is definitely an attractive business. A lot of prospects, a lot of great prospects in the coming years, and obviously an attractive stock, right? From a financial perspective, from the company's financial perspective, from a valuation perspective, what are your thoughts about Mahindra as a stock?
So yeah, I mean, at the end of it is going to be a function of sales, right? If we are expecting that EV sales or SUV sales in general will be good, and they're showing double-digit growth numbers every month in the SUV segment. Now, if they're able to exhibit that for the next 1 year, which I think they will, given their lineup, the amount of bookings they have, and how much their traction is. The other hand is the tractor business, which also is likely to show double-digit growth, right? So at the end of it, if I don't want to give projections or go in that direction, but if I have to broadly look at it, you will achieve double digit revenue growth. Profitability will also be strong because tractors are doing better. And at the end of it, if you look at the operating margins, tractors do about 18% operating margins, whereas SUVs do about 9%. So if tractor sales are assumed to be healthier than SUV sales in the coming year, then you'll also see margins at best being neutral or better. So profitability wise, also they'll do well. Cash conversion and cash cycles are better in tractors compared to the other business, so that will also keep it afloat. So from a financial perspective, doing pretty well. However, when it comes to the valuations, valuations will depend on two, three things, right? What is the market perception? What is the financial performance? And what are the projections like? And from that perspective, what will also happen is superior financial performance as well as the entire story or narrative that EVs are doing well and Mahindra is killing it in the EV market should drive valuations higher as well. The third factor that also plays into this picture or has played to a very large extent over some time is that Mahindra as a group was pretty messed up. It had not messed up, it had a lot of things. It had the tractor business, the vehicle business, then finance, then holidays, then Tech Mahindra, and this and that. So they fairly done a bit of simplifying the structure and done a bit of a restructuring as well, hiving off some units, reducing stake in some non-core businesses, getting rid of stuff that is not really accretive that way. And that breakdown of the entire scenario has also resulted in some value unlocking. So from that angle, we think that Mahindra is pretty well placed when it comes to both all three factors, right? Sales numbers, profitability, and hence financials and valuations as well on the other hand.
So, okay, let's summarize this, right? Obviously, there's no doubt about the fact that Mahindra is an extremely lucrative stock, an extremely lucrative business. There's good things on the horizon for them. So, is it safe to say that from within the automotive sector, is this your golden goose?
Can't say that explicitly right now, but so I would put it differently, right? There was a time, so auto sector, I think earlier our cycles used to go on for longer. We used to have some loyalty towards our picks, where not loyalty, but our holding period or our view used to be of a certain duration. That, hey, I have got a 2 year view on this, 3 year view on this company, etc. I think those views are becoming shorter in duration now. So we're changing our views pretty fast. So we were backing Tata Motors for the longest time. Then our preferences changed and it changed to Mahindra. And it will change in the future as well. Within that also we've got preferences sometimes that two-wheelers will prefer over four-wheelers and blah blah. So right now, yes, I mean in our pecking order, Mahindra would be higher up, and the others lower. But also, I think auto ancillaries look good or whatever. There are several pockets in the auto sector which look pretty good. Also, from the perspective that, again, as of today, RBI has cut rates, announced a massive 50 basis point rate cut, which should also give the sector some tailwinds and boost demand. So overall, I think we're feeling good about the auto sector, and Mahindra would be a preference in that.
Very, very diplomatic answer.
Otherwise, this is our preference. I'm not saying we're buying or we're selling or whatever. This is just our preference. If you want to get some advice, then you need to subscribe to our products. So this video is just for entertainment and preference citing. However, if you want real advice, go to rupeeting.com, buy our small cases, subscribe to our custom equity advisory products, and you'll get more explicit answers one on one when your customers.
And honestly, I would recommend everybody watching this to go on get your portfolio reviewed. Repeating, we do that for free. We've got a whole team of experts. All our analysis is everything is backed by research, and we've got people on this literally all day long. So you wanna get your portfolio checked. You wanna get a second review from an expert. Go to the Repeating website and click on the top right corner, free portfolio review. Also, check out the blog. Whatever we've spoken about right now, we've actually got an explicit sort of a detailed blog about the Mahindra stock and their tractor and EV business. So check that out. And yes, thank you so much for listening.
See you next time. Bye bye.